Hey folks, how you doing today? So thanks for being here. Glad you could make this version of the occasional series. And we're here tonight with Dave Rizzardo. He's going to talk about lean leadership, principled roadmap. So what I want to do right now is there are some other methods of engagement with LED. You can join our LinkedIn group. You could also subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you could get copies, you get notified rather, when there is a new video upcoming. Also, feel free to connect with us on my ASQ in LED. And also, too, of course, at the end of the month, there's the LSS conference in Phoenix. So hoping to see you guys doing some of these events or in these places.
I'm going to start out by just giving you a real quick background on who I am so you know where I'm coming from. I first started learning and studying and practicing lean back in the 1980s, actually before we called it lean. At AMP, we called it VAM, Value Adding Manufacturing, Value Adding Management. Manny, do you have any memories of what we called lean before we called it lean back in the 1980s?
Oh, I learned demand flow technology.
Yeah.
Which came from John Costanza, but yeah, JIT, all sorts of sort of flow.
Yeah, I mean, well, Schoenberger wrote a book called World Class Manufacturing. Some people started using that, but yeah, I started seeing some of the acronyms, total employee involvement, things like that. But yeah, it wasn't until what 90, 91, Womack wrote the book that coined the term lean. But that was the 80s. And in the 90s, I split my time between the biotech world at Becton Dickinson and went to and Stewart Connector Systems. And then I spent a number of years as part of the University of Maryland Industrial Outreach Program, where I was lean service manager there. And since 2014, I've been affiliated with MWCC, the Maryland World Class Consortia, facilitator of our lean peer group program, which we actually started when I was still at the university. And I also worked directly with companies. And in 2020, managed to get a book published called Lean, Let's Get It Right, How to Build a Culture of Continuous Improvement. And in fact, most of what we talk about today will be probably buried in the book somewhere. So agenda or how things will flow today. First, I want to talk about why this topic. I mean, I feel this is a critical topic for today. And then I want to talk a little bit about what is lean, just to make sure we're all heading in the right direction. It's not going to make a lot of sense if Manny and I are on a lean bus traveling in one direction and there's a few of you kind of traveling someplace else because of not an agreed upon understanding. So a little bit of time on what is lean, and then we'll get into the lean principles. And I'm going to be using the lean principles to help us define the role of a lean leader. And then at the end, we'll go over some of the handouts a little bit more. And my little note at the end here says, after each section, I'm going to be throwing out a suggested follow-up action for you. So it's some action items for you to carry out in the coming days or weeks. So why this topic? Now, first of all, lean changes everyone's job. I mean, that's a fact. I mean, everyone's job, and especially those in a leadership position. And I don't care whether you're the frontline supervisor or the CEO, the job changes, So what I want to do is use these lean principles. We won't be able to cover everything today, but pick some of the lean principles and use them to help us define the role of a lean leader. And I'm going to compare them to just the opposite, the anti-lean leader. And that's going to create a gap, a very large gap. And the intent is that this will help you identify gaps within your organization so you can start closing those gaps. So that's the plan. So, what really is lean? I mean, a couple slides later, I have a long definition of lean, but sometimes I just get back to the basics. What are lean companies doing that others aren't, or what are they trying to do that others aren't? Manny, you have any thoughts on that? On that basic?
Well, Dave, as a matter of fact, I do. Lean companies, for one, are paying attention to their opportunities. They're not just saying, well, it's no problem, so everything must be good, right? That's not what they're saying. So, and they're focused on people too, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that. Let me get back. Lost my slides again. All right, I kind of narrow it down to engaging people in improving processes, right? I mean, and not just engaging a few lean zealots. It's trying to get everybody involved. So that's one thing I think is different. The other thing is improving processes, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, but not waiting until there's some major problem. but it's being proactive about process improvement. So that's kind of the way I look at it. There's other definitions. Some people say eliminating waste, and that's not a bad one. I mean, we're trying to eliminate waste from processes, so that's a good short definition. Some folks think of lean as a set of analysis and improvement tools. It's a lot more than that. Some companies have gotten in trouble because they thought that's all lean is, and you end up with a lot of nice shiny tools that nobody wants to use. But you definitely want to have the right, the powerful lean tools working for you. You don't want to try to build a house with a sharp stick and a rock, right? You need the right tools. It's really, trying to create this culture, right? It's called mindset, sometimes a philosophy, and that's what we're trying to do. Here's my wordy definition, and you try to get all the key aspects of lean when you put a definition like this together. There's even more. I'm sure there's more things I could have added, but it's a strategy designed to embed a culture of continuous improvement. Embed. I mean, that's really a key where we're trying to make it part of our DNA, right? It's part of what we do around here, where everyone strives to eliminate waste, right, from company processes by utilizing appropriate tools. The tools are important to add ever increasing value for the customer. Like I said, there's more words we could add. I'd probably add, experimentation. I think that's another key thing. I probably should put in there, consistently or continually experimenting. Having that sort of mindset. So that's that's why a lot of different ways to look at lean. And why? Well, of course, as you mentioned, to satisfy customers, be competitive, be profitable, continued growth, and create a more fulfilling work environment. I mean, more involvement, more learning, more growth, and yes, even more fun. In fact, I believe it's this last one here, creating a better work environment that kind of creates all these other benefits that we have. So that's just a little lean 101, what lean is, what a lean culture is, so we're all heading in the same direction, all on the same page. Choose your analogy. So lean principles. I looked up Merriam-Webster and saw this definition of principle: a basic truth or theory, an idea that forms the basis of something. And I think when I use the word principle as far as lean principles, that's a pretty good definition. It's the basic or the fundamental truths of lean. And it's, and these principles form the basis of our lean strategy, our lean culture. So, and there's a lot of different lists of lean principles. There's the Shingo model, or I'll reference every once in a while. There's the principles from the Toyota Way, the book by Jeffrey Liker, and Jim Womack in his book Lean Thinking has 5 key principles. And last but not least is Deming. I mean, his 14 points. We sometimes forget about these, but many of these points are definitely aligned with our lean principles. Now, I chose a little different categorization. I have the first 2. I kind of consider those the overarching principles, right? Adding value for the customer and eliminating waste. And then I tried to simplify it into three categories: people principles, process principles, and improvement principles. And like I said, we're going to pick a few of these and see how they help us define the role of a lean leader. So I'm going to start with continuous improvement. I mean, we've already talked about that a little bit, and it probably defines lean as well as anything. So let's look at continuous improvement, or pursue perfection is the way Womack had it. I believe the Shingo folks that seek perfection, all the same thing. So let's look at the lean leadership approach versus the anti-lean leader. And excuse my exaggeration here. I've run into a number of anti-lean leaders. I don't believe anybody actually had a bullhorn, yelling out the orders. But continuous improvement deals with the frequency of improvement. The traditional or anti-lean leader would say, hey, if you have a major problem, customer screaming, yeah, sure we'll improve, right? It's not really part of my job all the time. Anyway, I wouldn't have the time, but if there's a major problem, we'll do it. So it's a very reactive approach, very reactive, only when we have to. Of course, the lean approach is, my goodness, if customers already screaming, maybe too late. We already, we need to be more proactive, and ongoing improvement is part of the job. So it's a much more a proactive approach to improvement. So that's a huge gap, from reactive only when needed to proactive, where we're trying to make it part of what we do on a daily basis, So that's a huge gap. So we even have phrases to help us justify our anti-lean thinking, right? We say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think that's one of the most anti-lean phrases that we have. I don't know, Manny, what do you think? Is there a way to fix this phrase, or should we just throw it out, or how can we make this more aligned with lean? Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, tell you what, when I hear people use it, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. For one, I'm reminded, and I'll often tell them about the wall phone in my parents' kitchen, right? It worked fine up until the day it was taken out. It was a rotary phone until the day it was taken out for a touchpad or a touch tone phone, right? Nobody asked for it. We didn't really even know that we needed it. But the world hasn't looked back since. So
yeah,
I'd say companies that don't see the opportunities, they're not aware of them. They're not looking the way they should be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's get my screen back here. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I guess we could say, if it ain't broke, let's break it so we can put it back together better. I mean, it's one way to put it, or maybe we consider our processes always broken, so we always have to make them better. So maybe I just throw that phrase away. But there's a couple things I think describe the continuous improvement and the mentality we're trying to have very well. I like this quote from Andy Grove: "Success breeds complacency, complacency breeds failure. Only the paranoid survive." Right? Gotta almost be paranoid that the competitors are breathing down your neck. And here's an excerpt from an article about the Georgetown, Kentucky facility. No satisfaction at Toyota. I have the link there, but if anybody has a problem getting to that article, just send me an email and I'll send you a copy. But I love what they say here about the mindset is an institutional obsession with improvement that they managed to instill in every one of its workers. Man, obsession with improvement. And I think that's what we need, institutional. Manny, that word institutional, what do you think they're referring to there? You have any idea? Institutional obsession with improvement.
Well, I would say it's the things that are baked in, obviously, into the culture, into the organization. Yeah. New people come in and say, well, that's just the way it is. That's what I came into.
Yeah. That's the way I kind of view that that word institutional. It's part of what we do. It's part of it's the fabric of what it's part of our DNA. Institutional obsession with improvement. That should be what we're trying to develop. An institutional obsession with improvement. So what are some lean actions that we can, leader actions that we can do that are aligned, with this whole idea of continuous improvement? Well, first of all, we need to devote the time. Right? Time for the daily huddles, time for improvement activities, time for the improvement events. If our approach is, well, we'll do it when we have time, I guarantee you will not have time, right? I mean, of course, when we do want to do improvement opportunity or improvement when we do have time, but if that's your whole time management strategy, we'll do lean when we have time, I guarantee it's not going to work. You're not going to develop a lean culture. Man, do you agree with me on that one? That if we go with our plan is we'll do it when we have time, you won't have the time, I guarantee it. You have any thoughts on that?
That's right. Hey, believe me, when I get a minute, I'm going to clean out my sock drawer. I swear it. It's on my list. Along with this, I would say not just scheduling something like your daily huddles. I would say, and I tell people, look, try to schedule at least 2 hours a week strictly for continuous improvement activities. Yep. Maybe Friday afternoon when you're done fighting the battles for the week. Yep. Whatever. Just like you say, if you don't schedule it, it'll never happen. No. Just like my sock drawer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you got to. I mean, I like that. I mean, especially starting out. It's tough to to change the habits. So you have to be disciplined. Say, you know what, you're right. Every Friday from 1 to 3, we're going to work on improvement. We might be starting out. Training will be a major part of that, but we're going to dedicate that time. All right, and we're going to dedicate some time every day to have a huddle from 8 to 8:10, so we can have that daily communication. So you gotta devote the time. We've got to change, adjust our roles and responsibilities that we're talking about here with the leader role, but everybody's job changes to some degree. And support systems, everything needs to be aligned with lean. Our hiring practices, promotion, recognition, who's, your monitoring systems, communication, they all need to be aligned with lean. I think this is a critical part of being a lean leader, because if this whole idea of alignment, I mean, things aren't aligned with our lean principles. I call that organizational hypocrisy. We're saying we're going in this direction, but guess what? We're promoting and recognizing people that are actually going the other direction. That will bring your continuous improvement strategy to a grinding halt extremely quickly, and cause it to crumble. So I think that's something that as leaders you always have to be looking for. Are we aligned with our lean strategy and our lean philosophy? Otherwise you have a danger of really losing trust, and once that happens, it's very difficult to gain that back. So keyword alignment. I should have bolded that. I should have made that bigger. Alignment is key. So those are a few things. So before we get in the next principle, here's my challenge to you. Rate yourself from 1 to 5. Like I said, next tomorrow, next week, or next leadership meeting, or whatever. Give yourself a rating and where you are. And maybe it's a case where you can do it individually. Have everybody on your team do it individually, then get together and discuss the scores. And then identify those gaps, right? And make plans to reduce those gaps. And I have here, you have the reactive approach, as we talked about, when we have to, and the proactive approach, the lean approach. But I have this statement: no problem is a problem. It's one of those things, I think Tachi Ono said something like that once. Manny, what does that mean? No problem is a problem. What does that mean to you?
Well, for a good lean organization, it means that if we're satisfied with the status quo, the way things are, that we're missing the opportunities for improvement. Yeah. It's a case of working on the business versus working in the business. That's what we're trying to get.
Yeah, absolutely. Well put. Yeah, I mean, when you think of a problem, what's a problem? Well, it's a deviation from a standard, but it's also an improvement target. We create that gap. It's a gap, right? So when we're saying no problem is a problem, yeah, we're saying we're not moving, we're complacent, and that really is a problem. So that's a phrase to live by there. No problem is a problem. So that's continuous improvement principle. Like I said, it's a huge difference between a lean organization and maybe the traditional anti-lean approach, and obviously leadership role changes significantly. The next one I look at is focus on the process. I think the Shingo folks call it the same thing as I think focus on process. And this gets into the relationship between your method and the result, the process and the result. The lean approach is we want to have a robust, consistent standard process, and that's going to produce the results that we want. Now, the other approach, the anti-lean approach, is no standard process necessary. Everyone kind of does their own way. We even justify that sometimes by calling that empowerment, but it's really an abuse of the word empowerment. And it requires a lot of hoop jumping and firefighting because there's a lot of variation. Like there again, choose your analogy there. But that's what produces the results. That's a very risky approach. Again, we have phrases to justify our anti-lean thinking. The end justifies the means. Maybe in the short term, but long term, that's not a very good phrase. The means do matter. The how matters, not just the result. Okay. Now, why is that? Well, first of all, we need a standard process to reduce variability, so everybody follows the best current approach. But also, without a standard, there's no method of comparison. There's no deviation from the standard. We don't know what's right, what's wrong, what's correct, what's incorrect. And if you hire somebody, you're training someone. What do you train them on, right? If everybody, you have a different process. So these three bullets here, I actually think an argument can be made they existed even before we talked about lean, right? I think it's, because of these last two bullets, having a standard process is even more critical. It's even more critical. So you have a baseline to improve from. So we have a single process so the whole team can focus on that process so we can improve it. So the lean and improvement makes the need for a standard process and standardization even more critical. As Ono would say, without standards, there can be no Kaizen, there can be no continuous improvement. Now, that's there's a couple paradoxes here I think we need to be aware of, and I think as you develop your lean culture, you need to understand this, because not everybody is going to automatically understand this principle, because improvement and standardization sometimes don't sit well on the same side of the fence. People think, well, we're standardizing, we're locking something in stone, never to be changed. You're turning you're into robots, we're losing our creativity. So you have to make sure you explain this is just part of the improvement process. It's locked in stone only until we make another improvement, right? And we're focusing on this standard process so we can improve it. So I think there's a couple paradoxes you have to be aware of, because I think some people, just like this young lady here, is going to be scratching their head. What are you talking about here about standardization and and improvement? So it's a key point that needs to be driven home when you're talking to the folks about what standardization is and why it's so important. So, anti-lean leader, what would he say about this? Well, he'd say, of course, we have a general process. Everybody kind of does it their own way. Of course, there's a lot of firefighting, jumping through hoops, but that's what we do. There's a lot of variability. And the lean leader, well, the lean leader considers his job to lead the team in developing the standard process. And firefighting, is viewed as a process failure. Okay. Sure, sometimes you have to slap band-aids on things, get the product out the door, but we need to have the discipline to get back to that process and fix the process, And the standard, once again, is our baseline for further improvement. That's a big gap from variable process to a standardization. Having a standard process is absolutely critical for improvement. So leader actions are aligned with focus on the process. Well, first of all, accountability, like I said, not just for the results, but for the process. So we have to work with our teams to develop those standard processes. And we don't want to backslide. So we have to have what some people call an and-on system. I call it a deviation response system, to make sure that, we, when there's a deviation, to the process, that's highlighted and then it's addressed. And problem solving, less band-aids, more plan, do, check, act, root cause analysis, right? Long-term, focusing on the long term. Manny, do you have any thoughts here?
I have a question for you, actually. There's a couple questions that have come in from the audience. Yeah. One was, does standardize always mean that it's a documented procedure?
To standardize always means, well, I think it's critical to document it, however, the old phrase, picture's worth 1,000 words, so I'm not talking about a big, long, written, document. Oftentimes, just key bullet points with some pictures is a lot more effective. I don't know, Manny, what do you think about that as far as that question?
So the method that you use to document your process is, ideally, it's a single point lesson. It's a lot of pictures, kind of like IKEA instructions.
Right.
However, you don't want it to be something like that. Well, that's usually the way we do it, or most everybody knows how to do it that way, right? Yeah. You don't want that, because then someday it's like, well, that's the way we used to do it, because people came up with something different. Yeah,
I think it's critical that it's documented in some way, because it's such a critical part of the improvement process that you can't just leave that to chance. It's critical. Manny, was there another question?
Yes, there actually is. It goes back to the idea of scheduling time for continuous improvement.
Mhm.
So the question or statement goes, so some companies call the Kaizen week the scheduled time for continuous improvement. It's one whole week devoted to run Kaizens. Does this make sense for the time schedule? Otherwise, you will not have time. Or is it a matter of a metric like how many Kaizens we do each month?
Yeah. Well, I think there's multiple ways, and depending on the problem you're trying to solve, there's multiple ways to address those problems. These during the day, I mean, during the daily huddle, you could be discussing things that need to be corrected, and they can be done in a kind of just do it type of solutions. There's Kaizen events that you can dedicate, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. That can work, and there's advantages of that, especially early on. You kind of knock the inertia out of the way, but sometimes the once a week meeting, phase it out makes a lot more sense. It can be scheduled. So I think you need to be creative with how you schedule your events and your problem solving. And I think you want to move towards these every day making improvements. But yeah, there are some problems, the cross-functional challenges that they need some sort of event, but how you schedule that, I think can vary. There's a lot of ways. I mean, I think early on there was a big emphasis on Kaizen events, right? That's the only way you can do it. And I always said, well, that doesn't make sense. I mean, like I said, you can split it up into every week, every 2 weeks, and have the discipline. And there's advantages of that either way. So I don't know, Manny, do you have any thoughts on that? Yeah.
Oh, I always have thoughts on these things. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of things that you can do. What I would say is that it doesn't really matter as long as it makes sense for everybody in the organization. If it's scheduling a little bit of time, if it's sort of dropping things and working on them. I mean, if you go too much one way or the other, it's always scheduled or always not scheduled. It's too rigid. Rigid flexibility is what we actually need these days.
Yeah. I mean, I do like the devoting a couple hours per week to work on some things, but some major challenges, maybe a Kaizen event makes sense, but they're very resource heavy, if you're going to dedicate a team for a week. So like I said, sometimes it makes most sense to phase those things out. So be creative and yeah, don't get stuck in the we have to have a 5-day Kaizen event or something like that. No, you don't have to. There's multiple ways to solve these problems. So shall we go on? Move on?
Sure.
All right. Less firefighting and more focusing on the process so the fire never occurs, right? Now that brings up another, I think, a key leadership challenge. Coaching the super firefighters in the organization to work more on preventing the fires, refocus their creativity towards standardizing, improving the process. My experience is some of the firefighters are some of the most creative people within the organization. So it's a matter of refocusing that creativity towards, creating a standard process and then improving that process. And I actually believe that some of the department firefighters, likely oftentimes the leader, they maybe even love being a firefighter. They may be complaining all the time, oh God, I got to do this, but they actually, love being the firefighter. So it's sometimes a role that takes a lot of coaching to change. I don't know, man. Do you agree with me on that statement? Have you ever run into the hoop jumpers within a company that actually love being the hoop jumpers or the firefighters? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, sure. Well, they're the go-to person.
Yeah.
Right. They're the people that people look to for answers or solutions. I think a lot of it comes down to the way early jobs, the way people grew up in the business world. And if they're not really conscious of their role, then that becomes the way it is. And because they get that dopamine hit every time they solve a problem.
Yeah,
it's a big deal. It can be a big deal for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a huge challenge. And I lost my screen again. Yeah, and I mean, sometimes that's who we promote, right? We promoted the super firefighter. So there again, we've got to look at our our systems, our support systems, who are we promoting? Who are we recognizing? But I think there's a lot of time, a lot of coaching needed with the area firefighters to help them understand why we need a standard process, why we need them to help us create this standard process, and then help us improve this standard process to another higher standard, right? Key leadership challenge, I believe. So that's the process, focus on the process. Principle, like I said, one end we have variable process, and the other end, having a standard process is key. In fact, starting out, I mean, a lot of times we talk about, we need to stabilize, standardize, and improve. But I'll tell you, stabilizing and standardizing, there's a whole lot of improvement there. Just focusing on that, getting the folks together and say, how do we do this? And there's 5 different ways we're doing it. Let's talk about this process. Let's create this standard. Then we, discuss, okay, how are we going to document this process so it's, it's recorded. So give yourself a rating there and have that discussion and identify those gaps and then start closing those gaps. Next step. Next one I talk about is the everyone principle. Most lists of principles, lean principles would have this kind of within the respect for people principle, but I kind of gave it its own principle because I don't think we do enough of this. I don't think we have enough organizations that are trying to get everybody involved, as opposed to having a few lean zealots running around doing some lean things. So we need to get everybody engaged. Here again, the anti-lean leader, he said, hey, it's it's not my job to get everybody engaged. We have the lean department over there, the OE, Operational Excellence Department. Maybe that's they're the ones that do this lean stuff. I'm not a teacher or coach. I mean, it's people development, and that's HR. It's not my job, basically, right? As opposed to lean leader, engaging the team, it is my job, a critical part of my job. We strive to utilize everyone's brain power. It's a critical part of my job. I think of these leaders as multiplier leaders because they're multiplying their expertise, their knowledge, their experience by engaging others. So I think we really got to make sure we hire, we promote, we recognize these leaders that are truly aligned with this principle. Try to get everybody engaged. So you're the boss, just tell everybody to do it, right? Good, be motivated, be engaged, give me creative ideas, Is it that simple? Well, be nice if it was that simple. Not quite. Of course, I don't know, man, you think it's that simple? Just tell people.
Well, actually, so I was coming in to talk about a couple of questions, but, I do love this slide. It reminds me of that old saying, the beatings will continue until morale improves.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we're just not built that way. You can't dictate, how much I use my brain. So yeah, you had a couple questions, Manny?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a couple of comments. One being, getting back to the firefighting piece. After a while, being a firefighter does get tiresome after years of doing it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, plus, it's nice if the firefighter can go on vacation sometimes, but when you're the one that has to make it happen, it's like, it's a constant battle,
Well, and that same person actually made a comment, we want to avoid the burning out the firefighters, because after all, you can't really focus on what's important or the real fires if they're stretched thin already, or trying to do the work of multiple people in the department, because that happens to me, Dave, sometimes. It's like, oh, Manny knows how to do that. We'll let him do it. Oh, he can pull the reports because he knows how to work the system.
Yeah.
Not that I'm going to hurt myself patting myself on the back, but many departments have somebody like that, and if they're not careful, oh well, Andrew will do it. I don't have to worry about it. And
yeah. Oh, that's dangerous because that's how you lose your best people. You burn them out, and then you lose your best people. So.
There is another question or comment, and it's getting back to this idea of standardization. And so to standardize, I'm sorry, in the international project development world, there is what we call a result-based management. Can this also be process-focused to be lean? And the follow-on to that is the demarcation between the process-focused and being result-focused, and then what's the entry point for success?
Yeah. Okay, I'll tell you, I don't view. Yeah, I've heard that before. Toyota's more, process and more result, but no, it's how you get the result, right? You know, we're result focused, but how we get that result is through having a standard process and defining and refining that process. So I don't quite agree with we process focused, result focused. We want the results. Toyota wants the results. But it's how you get those results. It's through having a standard process. It's kind of like who was the John Wooden, UCLA coach for a number of years. They would never lose. I mean, they were winning all the time. He never used the word win when he would talk to his players. I mean, I've read that from a number of players. He never used the word. He never talked about the result, about winning. It's all about the process of playing basketball. The fundamentals. But did he want to win? Of course, he wanted to win. He wanted that result. He wanted that result. Badly. I mean, but it's how he got that result. It's through the process and focusing on the process. That's the way I look at it. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that's the way I look at the result focused or process focused. All right. So let's move on. Yeah, this just won't work. So what are some actions that we can that are aligned with this everyone principle? Communication, less telling, more teaching, more coaching, more asking questions. And this is, this takes practice, right? We're used, some people used to being the boss and just telling people what to do. And we're trying to develop problem solvers. So a lot of times you have to ask better questions and try to get people to think for themselves. And that doesn't come natural for a lot of people. In fact, on my wall behind me, I have a little sticky note that says, ask better questions. So a lot of times it's less telling, more asking, and so that takes time. The environment, we've got to create a respectful, safe environment. I mean, there could be people that they want to be engaged, they want to give ideas and highlight problems, but they don't have that safe, emotionally safe environment. Because every time I bring something up, my boss just screams at me. So we have to create that safe environment for the workforce. And once again, we have to have mechanisms or methods, of engagement, right? Huddles, dedicated improvement time, those events, those things we already talked about. And there again, be flexible, make it work for you. And there again, the support systems. This goes along with all the principles. We need that alignment, but I just highlighted here because I just think that it's critical that leaders are aligned with this principle. And my little note here is that this principle dives into some of the topics of motivation and influence, and that's new to some leaders, especially those at the front line. So once again, this isn't something you're going to send somebody to a supervisor one-on-one course and okay, that's all you have to do. No, this is going to take constant coaching and reflecting, and doing that rest of our careers. So some very challenging issues trying to get everybody engaged, obviously. Another way, this is maybe a little bit repetitive from the last slide, but just another way to look at it. We call this, resistance to change, and we kind of lump a lot of things in resistance. But sometimes I think, there's different flavors of resistance. First of all, we need to remove the demotivators, those things that, when there is a lack of, equity or fairness or lack of respect, trust is lost, people quit listening. We sometimes call that, resistance, but they're not even listening to you, So we need to make sure there's no demotivators. We've got to learn more about what these demotivators are and looking at our systems and practices and processes to make sure we, at least listening to it. I get folks to speak up, and there again, back to the safe environment. If we don't have the safe environment, we call that, well, they're resisting. They're not resisting, they're just reluctant. It's more reluctance because you haven't created that environment for them. And there again, we got to give folks a reason to speak up, to care, right? This gets back into the motivator of purpose, otherwise, like I said, is it resistance? Sometimes I think it's just apathy, right? So there's a lot to learn, and of course, we have to create the opportunities and the methods for people to speak up and act. So lot to talk about in under this principle for sure. of engaging people and motivation and influence and demotivation. So there again, not my job. We only have a select few folks involved with lean continuous improvement, or where are we within that range? Another assessment to look at. All right. The last principle I want to get to is the optimize the value stream principle. The Shingo folks refer to that as the think systemically, I believe it is, not systematically. Systematically, I think is more applies to the scientific think of the Plan, Do, Check, Act. It's a very systematic approach to improvement, but think systemically, systems thinking. Right, optimize. I refer to it, optimize the value stream. Of course, we have our value stream map. Some of you recognize the basic value stream map, material and information flow. But when you really think about our value streams, there's a lot more than what we see on the map. I mean, there's all these other departments that are part of the system, right? They're all interconnected, within this system that they create the product or service that we supply to a customer. Right? So it's a system. Once we look at things as a system, we realize that, yeah, everybody's involved. It doesn't make sense for somebody, say, in engineering to say, you know what, lean, yeah, it applies over manufacturing, but not really here. That doesn't make sense. When we really, realize that our companies are systems, we're all interconnected. It applies everywhere. So like I said, that gets back to the everyone principle, and also all these linkages. I can't even draw it on a value stream map. I mean, all these linkages that connect us. We have to address those, or else that's where waste is formed. That's where we have the delays. That's where we have the inventory buildup. So we got to think, systemically, and optimize the value stream. So that is a critical principle. I think all the principles are, of course, critical. That's why they're principles. But this one, I think, is, carries a little bit more weight because it really affects how we view how we work together. And if we work together. So we got to think of our these systems. Nothing new. I mean, look at Deming's point number 9: break down barriers between staff areas. He even had a the Deming flow diagram, kind of a skeleton of a value stream map. And that's one thing that he was stressing, that we have to view our organizations as systems. So there again, what the anti-lean leaders say. He said, "Hey, I'm only concerned with my department. I'm staying in my lane. The problem's over there. It's not my problem." This very functional silo type of mindset, as opposed to lean leader. Yeah, we all have our areas of responsibility, but a problem anywhere in a value stream is, the problem for all of us is the system loses, we all lose, right? So collaboration is key. So kind of have this value stream system mindset of and collaborative mindset and working together. Big gap, huge gap between those two. So what are some leader actions in alignment with the optimize the value stream? Well, some companies, sometimes it makes sense to organize by value stream, right? Take down all of those functions and dedicate them to different value streams, kind of companies within companies. One thing, collaboration. Sometimes we call this, being more of a boundary manager, working with your internal suppliers and customers and helping solve problems wherever they're at. It's absolutely critical. We got to create opportunities for the value stream to meet. There again, I think Deming had a quote something like, "A system won't manage itself," right? And I agree with that. You have to create opportunities and make sure we get together to work on those system issues. Cross training, not just to increase the flexibility of the workforce, but you're learning about your internal customer and what their needs are. So I'm just asking you here to think a little bit more broad about cross training, not just increasing the flexibility, but the understanding between internal customers and suppliers. And we got to eliminate this finger pointing. There's absolutely no value whatsoever pointing fingers. Like I said, we're all part of the same system, and we need to work together. Once again, optimize the value stream, critical principle. and we need to look at our organization systems so that we collaborate effectively and we engage everybody throughout the whole organization because we're all one system. So once again, I'll finish with section with my same challenge. Just look at your organization and this, with respect to this principle, give yourself a rating, get together, have a discussion, and then most important step is, okay, now what are we going to do about it? We have this gap, and what are we going to do to close it? So those are the 4 principles I wanted to go over. We touched on some of the other ones, of course, teamwork and respect for people are kind of, like I said, they overlap a lot. One of the handouts I have, I go over all the principles and throw a number of other thoughts as far as how they define the lean leader. But I want to go over these 4 because I just feel like the gap that they create from the traditional anti-lean approach to what we're striving for with our lean approach is it's a huge gap, and therefore obviously it affects how we have to lead, and we have to work on closing those gaps. Additional information, those handouts that you have, just go through these quick. This is just one of the handouts on, as I just mentioned, about the lean principles, how they define the role of the company leaders. I go through all the principles and add some more things as far as defining the lean leader. This is just one of the pages, the next up from there. I have a quick and dirty lean culture assessment. That's exactly what it is. I mean, it's not an in-depth assessment. Again, it goes back to this, give yourself a rating. Here I have it from 0 to 5 on some of these categories. But I think there's a couple of reasons to do this, not just to kind of assess where you are now, but to start the discussion, start the conversation internally. So there's my quick and dirty lean culture assessment, which is in your handouts. And this is in the slides. There's not a handout for this. This is in your slide package. But a few videos that I recommend you watch. Greatness by David Marquet. He wrote a book called Turn the Ship Around, and it really, by applying lean and lean leadership, he really took his submarine from the worst to the best. And I think there's a lot to learn from that. Next one, there's a short video, Jocko Willink. This really deals with leading with humility, and a short. Paul Akers has all kind of great videos. There's a short one here. I think there's a lot of messages, packed into that 3-minute video. And Tom Peters' video, just a short one reminding us how critical the frontline leader is. So just a few videos to look at. There's a handout in there about our lean peer groups. I think we still have room for one more member in the group that's just forming. They'll be starting this month. But if we get enough interest for another group, we'll start up another group, or one of our groups ends in May, I believe. So we'll be starting back up in June. So I think that's it from me. Manny, do we have any more questions we want to address?
Oh, lots of questions, as a matter of fact, Dave. Some comments, some really great stuff here. I mean, I want to share all that with you. So bear with me if I take them slightly out of order.
All right.
So one of the points that we want to make here is, hang on a second, sorry. Okay, so can you use positive reinforcement to encourage firefighters to look for new ways to prevent fires? Maybe raises or incentives or something along those lines. How can you get firefighters to change?
Yeah. I mean, that's how to get firefighters to change. I mean, I think there's a lot of ongoing teaching and coaching required. I mean, it's really a redirecting of that creativity. I think it's sitting down and talking to them and expressing the need for standard processes and how important they are in establishing those, and how and their role in doing that. I don't know, man. Do you have any thoughts on on that?
I would say if you've got the right KPIs that roll up into dashboards, that then would be reviewed on a Gemba board during the Gemba walk.
Yep.
Then I would say that would probably be enough publicity, if you will, to issues and catching them before they become crises, that people could start to become more proactive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's lots of stuff here. Somebody else made a point here, and I think it's interesting. I recommend not to set time aside for lean late on a Friday. This person goes on to say most people are exhausted at that time of the week, and you will be showing how important it is or is not if you make it a part of leader standard work every day. And I completely agree with that, but there's the other principle: meet your client where they are. So, you know, we can work to get them there, but I don't know that we can start them there necessarily. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not there again. It's not an either or. I think we do want to have some daily, at least during the huddle, some daily discussions. We can't turn that into a problem-solving, session, or else we are spending all day, on improvement. But yeah, we do want to have that daily, improvement discussion at least. But dedicating, whether it's Friday or Thursday, dedicating some time that we are going to work on a process. We are going to do training during that time, I think is important. But hey, look at Paul Akers. What's he do every day? They spend what, about 45 minutes to an hour every day on improvement. If you can do that, I think that's fantastic. Is spending 45 minutes an hour on your improvement, have your daily meeting, and then follow your standard work from there. So I think you have to experiment, see what works for you. And like I said, I don't think it's a either or do we do things daily or once a week. I think that needs to be adjusted, as needed as you develop. So.
Yeah, it's funny. You want to talk about Paul Akers? Just yesterday, I stumbled on a video, 23 minutes long, of him working with some people to improve a process. And he really didn't have the answers. I mean, it was really people just jumping in. It was great. They took a process that had been at 3 minutes. After they made a design change, they got it down to 1 minute. And then by working to package, he was able to get it down with his team to about 16 seconds.
Yeah.
So from 3 minutes to 16 seconds, one bite at a time, if you would, right?
Yeah.
Not all in one step, but.
Yeah, it's I'll tell you what, man.
Sorry.
Yes,
go ahead.
sometimes these small improvements, somebody might think, wow, what, you're saving a minute or but in manufacturing especially, we do things over and over. So if we save a minute and we do that 25 times a day and 5 days a week, I mean, by the end of the year, we've saved a lot of hours. So sometimes these small improvements aren't so small, because of the cumulative effect, right? And also, I just think a lot of these, that's why I love Paul Akers' kind of approach. I think these small improvements, it's like a muscle. We're trying to develop improvement muscles, So the more we learn to improve and the more we can analyze things critically, I think small, medium, and large improvements will result from that, is the way I look at it, so.
Sure. So looking at the time, Dave, I see it's about 7 o'clock now, or 7 o'clock on the Coast. We do still have some more questions. I'm more than happy to go through them if you've got the time. As long as we get people hanging with us, then if it comes down to you and me talking, I'll just call you on the phone. But as long as there's other folks, then we go a little on. Some great points and some great questions here.
Yeah. No, I'm willing to sit here as long as I can chat about this stuff all night. So.
Great. Yeah. Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that, but I appreciate your comments. So somebody made a comment. It's really important to understand that you have an external or an internal customer. Most people tend to overlook that aspect. So just a comment there.
Yeah. No, that's, I have a story about that. I mean, first, that's part of the, like I said, the optimize the value stream, that we have all these internal suppliers and customers. And when I was at AMP, we actually had to interview our internal customer. I was a manufacturing engineer, and we actually had to do a formal, seemed kind of hokey, but we had to do a formal interview to understand our internal customers' needs, and I'll tell you, that drove home, the fact that, yeah, we have an internal customer, and it's through these internal customers that eventually get to the final customer that pays us, right? So absolutely, that's a critical concept, and why the optimize the value stream, or the think systemically principle, is so absolutely critical. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. The only problem with something like that is you can pencil whip it, right? I mean, I agree. I think it's great that explicitly you had to talk to your customer, but if both sides don't take it seriously, then it's just another exercise, right?
Yeah.
Silly.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, that's where leadership has come in too. This, I talked about eliminating this finger pointing. That you just can't accept that, right? I mean, that's where, lean is both directive and empowering. I mean, I've talked a lot about the empowering part, but there is a directive part, and, we start this finger pointing. We have to say, wait a minute, we are on the same team and part of the same system. And that just can't be tolerated, so sometimes, you really have to say, this is our, these are lean principles that we're living by, and that's a violation. I'm throwing the lean flag, violator, and we can't have that, so absolutely, it's critical. Yeah.
Sure. So, a couple other questions or comments. One is going back to standardized work and managing it. Do you have any experience with standard work in an office, specifically with this new remote workplace era? Do you have any suggestions on what a remote and-on system might look like?
Well, a remote and-on system, so when there's some deviation from the standard, what would be a good remote? I don't know. I'd think about that. Man, you have any thoughts about that?
Well, a little bit. I mean, if you're using something like Yammer or an instant chat kind of thing, you might be able to ping somebody and see if they're there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, unless you send out an email to your department that says, hey, look, I'm falling behind on the phones, for instance, or on support tickets, I need some help. That's where I like the hybrid environment, and we're gonna have to figure out the best ways to.
Yeah, and
where
maybe
a light at somebody's cubicle,
or
even better, I've seen cups used for hand-on purposes too.
Yeah. I mean, it might be just more frequent. Hey, we have to have a quick check-in to see where we are with a lot of these Zoom meetings or whatever. That even if just short get-togethers to see where we're at and where we need help. So maybe kind of more of these daily huddles, but not if we're not physically there, but we still can address those issues, and we can rebalance the work or whatever. So thank goodness for Zoom.
So let's see, it's just a bunch of comments, so I'll just go through. One says, celebrate successes to motivate firefighters to implement preventative measures and keep track of the reduction in the crisis, like machine downtime reduction.
Absolutely.
It's sort of the oh gosh, I'm sorry, I just blanked that out. But the Hawthorne effect, most people think that it's if you focus on something, it automatically gets better. Not exactly what the Hawthorne effect is, but it's close.
Yeah. What was the comment about the firefighter again?
Oh, just the idea that by trying to encourage them, that you can make these firefighters change their minds.
Yeah.
I think it's part of what gets the most recognition, or I don't want to say praise, right? It's not like people are dogs, but we do want recognition.
Yeah.
And if leaders are sincere about saying, hey, you prevented this problem, great job.
Yep.
Versus, you fixed this problem, thanks.
Yep.
Then we start to see things change a little bit. Right. Celebrate the organization is what people spend the leaders' time on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, celebrating success, absolutely. I mean, boy, I'll tell you, celebrating even. I've often thought we ought to have celebrate the biggest mistake. Let me explain that. I mean, the only way we improve is through continuous PDCA cycle, continuous learning. So it takes, a while, there is no failure, right? It's just a matter of learning. You learn something, you try something else, so it's like, I think there's, celebrate the best PDA cycle, even though we didn't solve the problem yet. This is what we do. This is what we learn, because that's kind of the mindset we're trying to develop. There's no failure unless we didn't learn anything, and we have to keep trying these things, so we need to celebrate that. And early on, somebody gives an idea, and you have to make a big deal about that stuff, because you have to highlight what's important, and I think even some of these public all hands meetings and picnics or whatever, that's got to put recognize people and put lean out in front, because this is highlight, this is what we do around here, that's what we're about. So.
People ask me, well, what do you recommend, Vanny, for recognition of Kaizen teams? Should we do a bowling picnic or a lunch? Like, yeah, that's great. You can give them money too, but you know what, really? If the executives, especially the ones that they hear about but don't see very often, if they sit down and have lunch and take a genuine interest in the team and its results, that's huge.
Yeah.
You can't put a price on it.
I'll tell you.
It's hard, right? It's hard because you're spending the most precious resource of all, but that's what you got to do.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think there's two words that I actually I wanted to end with, that really are two of the most underutilized lean leadership words, and they need to be used more often. And that's thank you. Thank you for a good job. Thank you for coming up with that idea. And I'll tell you, I've often told some of the the lean team members, what, you got to drag the executives out. You got to say, hey, we're going out, and you're going to thank that person. That guy on the line that came up with this idea, because he really worked on this, and he tried, and whether it worked or not, you get out there and say those two simple words, thank you. It goes a long way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, so Dave, I'm thinking we should wrap up. I've got a couple more comments though that I think are just so good that I want to go through them real quick. So one is, the morning stand-up meeting is really a great thing to implement with remote workers, so they can get a status update on how everybody's doing. I've even heard of this happening twice a day in a dynamic situation. You get to 5 minutes. Hey, anything changed since last time we talked? No? Yeah. Great. How about you? How about you? How about you?
Yeah.
Whatever works for you guys, it's just, tell you what, more communication, not less. Yeah. That's the key, I think.
Yeah, I don't think you can over-communicate. That's for sure.
You can, but it's very difficult to at this day and age.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
I said it once, I said it twice, but people didn't hear it till the fifth time.
Yeah, the phrase I hate is, that's on a need-to-know basis. That one bothers me. Kind of the, I'm not going to communicate that to you because you're not on the list that needs to know. I think that's a very anti-lean approach. So if there, as far as phrases that kind of are in my pet peeve category,
Oh man, we could talk about so much. For a while there, I was working in organizations where I really felt like there were the haves and the have-nots, and it was information. The haves, they know what's going on because they're a part of it. The have-nots don't know. They get some third hand. We're doing this. We don't know why. We're not doing this. You don't know why. I mean, and it gets very confusing. And that's after a while, it's like, okay, fine. I'm just going to do what I'm told.
Yeah. And rumors start, right? I mean, and rumors, when there's a communication void, rumors start, and they're always negative. I've never heard a rumor of, what, there's something going on. I've seen these guys around here with some suits. I bet they're working on giving us a big raise, man. I bet that's what they're working on. No, I've never heard that. It's always like, what's going on? Or we selling a company or what's going on? So whenever there's a communication void, I think it's filled with rumors, and for the way it is, it's always filled with something that's negative, unfortunately. So.
Oh my gosh, we could really talk about this.
Yeah.
A couple more things I want to do to finish up. So somebody else said about celebrating success. This person uses a clip from the end of Saturday Night Live when everybody from the show, they're clapping and hugging and smiling and really taking a moment to celebrate their achievement. Love that.
Love it.
Other than that, I think I've caught pretty much everything else. There were a bunch of thank you for this, thank you for that, the handouts. Somebody made a point of saying they're incredibly informative. Thank you. We got several of those. So, you know what I'd say, folks? Let's not ruin it. Let's leave everybody on a good note, wanting maybe just a little bit more. Dave, I want to say thank you for taking the time to present this topic and really doing it in a way that, it's not like it really came in knowing something. And I think you acknowledge that and really helped build. That's why you pulled out your key points. Really, thank you. It was appreciated. For sure.
Appreciate the opportunity to talk in the chat, Lean. I mean, I love this stuff, and anybody has any questions or comments or thoughts, shoot them my way. Like I said, I literally could. I know you and I could talk about this stuff all night, but that probably wouldn't be too wise.
Do you have a slide with your email address on it? If not, just make sure it's part of the presentation. And we'll get it out.
Yeah, let's see. I think it is on. Well, here's my final comment. Was thank you, and yeah, my email's there, dave@leanmaryland.com.
Oh, there you go. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So that'll help, and it's part of the presentation, so people will be able to see it. The other than that, we've got a bunch of great, great discussions, information. Thank you so much. Excellent type responses. So, folks, thanks. Hopefully, sorry, Dave. Do you want to say anything?
No, I just want to say thanks. Thanks to you and Hank, who originally made the contact. I really appreciate that. I really love doing this stuff, and thank you for your expertise. Help me out here when needed.
Hey, we're all here to help each other. We all know something the other person doesn't. So, no worries. So, folks, I will say that as you may have seen, we had way more discussion than you usually see on webinars. Unfortunately, the problem was it was between Dave and me mostly. But this is what you can expect to see on the occasional series moving forward. Next month, we're going to start it off with my co-host. You may have seen him before. His name's Howard Zwick. He and I do a lot of presenting together. And we're going to be having this sort of give and take back and forth and conversation, not just between ourselves, but also with the audience, because we're going to do it on GoToMeeting, where everybody can be heard. So really hoping you'll join us. Like I said, you haven't seen any way to sign up for that yet, but in the next week you will. And I'm hoping to put it out all the places where you hang out. So I would say, folks, thank you. You've got a lot of choices in this world. Really appreciate you spending the last 75 minutes or so with us, and with Dave in particular, taking the benefit of his willingness to share his knowledge and experience. Dave, anything else?
No, I think that's it. As I already mentioned, thank you very much. I really appreciate this, and I definitely think that is, like I said, those two words should be used more often. Thank you.
Well, I will say thank you for sharing all of those things. And folks, if you guys have any questions, you want to get with Dave, feel free to reach out and contact him directly. He's a great guy. I've been talking to him quite a bit as we were putting this together. If you have any questions for me, or if there's something that you want to see, a topic that you might like to see on the occasional series where we get to cover more than just one topic, or on the monthly webinar series, which is a bit more traditional, but very informative as well. So, folks, on behalf of Lean Enterprise Division, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day in safe fashion, wherever you are and whatever you're doing. Take care. Bye.